I'm going to share screen. Okay, I'm going to block everybody out. Here we go. Share. Okay, can everybody see the big green?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
Yes.
Now that, okay, here we go. We'll fancy.
Okay, we're back in the shop, and it's going to be talking about how the sands work. Okay, here we go. First of all, Dennis and I have been sanding for 50 years, and we have tried every different types of sanders, different types of sandpaper, and over the years, we've spent a lot of money on ineffective sanders, and it's come down to the point where these are the various types of sanders that we use and the different pads that we use. Now, real quick, not mentioning any brand, but this type of a sander is an electric 110-volt sander. It has various speed ranges, anywhere from 4,000 RPM to 10,000 RPM. And the beauty of this brand of sander is that it'll take a lot of different manufacturing pads that you could put on, as that is a flat standard pad that comes with the sander for doing flat work. This one has a lip on it so that you can go up cove and curved areas, and it's a 5-inch. You could put, they also make this in a 6-inch version, but same speed range, same everything. And you can slow these down to do very detailed work, or you can speed them up to do quick sanding if you want to remove a lot of material. Okay, there's a number on the top of the sander. It's 5.0, and what it means is it's in millimeters, the oscillation or orbiting pattern of the sander. They make them in different, like a 3.5 or a 5. This one's a little bit more aggressive on the orbital part of it.
That's a 5-inch, and then you have a 6-inch over there.
Yeah, 6-inch here with that cold pad on it. All of these have the same 5mm orbital pattern.
What about the Rotec?
Now, this is the Festool Rotec sander. It has two settings, aggressive and less aggressive, right here. You have to change it while the sander's on. But when this is in the aggressive mode with maybe a 120 grit disc, you can flatten a board with this. I mean, it is a beast. Okay. Now, Makita makes an exact replica of this at about half the price, in case you're interested. It's in fact, I'll get it out here real quick. It's the same sander, has the same settings, same RPM, same speed control. It's about $350. This one's $650, $700 now. This one is actually quieter than that one. Yes, it has the same identical port. Everything is exactly the same, and it's about twice as quiet. Well, I'll turn them on real quick during the demonstration, and you can check it out. But I use both of them. Again, I don't change sandpaper, I change sanders. Okay.
Test piece of Sapelli.
Okay. First of all, this is a piece that I ran through the sanding machine. It's basically been sanded to 120 grit. It's flat, straight, and square. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to start out with a 240 disc with the Rodex sander. Just to demonstrate this sander, I'm going to do this one. I could use the other Merca brand. So I'm going to turn on the dust control and might help, but plug it in.
I left this real time unedited because it's just amazing how short it takes. Yeah.
Okay. So all I'm going to do with that sander right now, we're up to 240. I also have a piece of 400 grit. We're going to go, basically we're going to go 240, 400 grit, 800 grit, and 3000. And this is on the high speed. This is 10,000 RPM. Okay, that's it for that one. Now we're going to move over and grab a piece of 800 paper.
Such a hardship having to unstick the
Yeah,
paper.
I know. Again, this is real time. This wasn't speeded up to shorten the sanding, the amount of time used on sanding. This is just real time. By the way, the board's about 8 inches wide and about 2 feet long, so approximately 2 square feet. Or board
Well,
feet.
that's pretty smooth right now. A lot of people won't even go up that high, but Dennis and I like the natural finish, the high gloss finish of sanding, and then applying the oil finish as opposed to a polyurethane or a lacquer finish. So right now we're 3,000 grit at 10,000 RPM. I would say roughly we have about 2 square feet of wood here. And I could probably quit any time now. I can see that the finish on the board. And that's been polished to 3,000 grit. And if I apply a coat of oil on it, it'll look almost like glass.
Now, if you were to find a blemish or something in it, how would you?
Well, okay, occasionally I'll get to this point and then I'll see what's called micro scratches or a blemish in it. And so all I do is I don't think I have one here. But if, let's say for instance, there was one over here, I would just drop down 1 grit to 800 grit and then see if I've removed the micro scratches and then polish it back. But micro scratches can be as deep as maybe a half a thousandth of an inch deep, or even they're just, what's the term, micro scratch. They're very fine scratches left over from the previous grit sanding. They do seem to show up when you start using the finer grits, because the sawdust is so fine, it will fill those scratches and they kind of pop out of it. Bye, everybody. Have a good evening.
But wait, there's more.
Told me that this is going to be the compressed version of walking. Over here, that's what it's current project is. Over here. That is it. It's just dry fitted, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's no glue on this right now. In fact, I could take the arms off, but they fit rather perfectly right here.
Okay, the seat blank is glued up.
Yeah, the seat blank is glued up, but the legs, the front legs, and the arms are just.
Should I glued in yet? Perfect.
Now, I'll give you an example of where I would use this pad. Right here, there's this cove, and I can get right inside that cove with that pad. You see how it bends up around that lip, where a flat pad won't do that. A flat pad will leave a nice groove right in there. Then I can turn it this way and do the same cove sanding in that area. I can get down in these areas with this contour pad. Yeah. You can see here that it just contours to the shape of the leg. And again, if I turn the sander on, I can turn this sander way down. And I can just very gently get into where I want to work, as opposed to having it on really high speed, which is scary in a delicate area. So the combination of the variable speed sander with the high RPM and the ability to put different pads on them make this a real diversified tool to use in a lot of aspects. As an example, right here, I can just sand right up inside this coved area right here, and with this contour pad. Now the contour pad isn't really good for flat surfaces. It's okay for small areas, but out on this outer lip, it wants to flex. And so it's really a contour. It was actually designed for people that are doing countertops out of synthetic materials to go up the cove of that splashback on your sink. I probably have about 50 hours in this right now and another 60 to go. The fun part's done. Now comes the sanding and the grinding and the grinding and the sanding and the sanding and the grinding to get the point. Okay, say goodbye again. Okay, take care. If anybody's interested, this one's for sale.
Always, okay, now I'm going to stop sharing, okay? There we go, back to it. So that was fun to go. It's always fun to go over to Ed shop and see him work like that. The joinery is like perfect. I get tired. I'm sure he gets tired of hearing me say that, but
another compliment.
Another compliment. If you have the opportunity, it is fun to watch. I'm going to get rid of this guy here.
Can I ask Ed a question here?
Sure. Fire away, Michelle.
Okay, so you can't, or can you use that sanding technique with the the 240, 400 and up on veneer, or would that be too aggressive?
Too aggressive.
Well, first of all, a lot of veneers are so thin now that they don't even recommend you sand them. They come kind of pre-sanded, and they're so thin that if you start doing any type of aggressive sanding at all, you'll wear right through the veneer.
Yeah.
So depending on your application, if you're going to veneer something, you really want to look at the thickness. That, as an example, if you buy veneer that's 10/1000ths of an inch thick, 2 thicknesses of a piece of paper, there's not much room to sand. Now, in the old days, veneer was like a 32nd or a 16th of an inch thick, and you could do something with it. But it's gotten so thin that at least the lumberyard is telling me if you buy like walnut plywood, don't sand on it. There's nothing there to sand. So it's mainly made, the veneer plywoods now, I think, are mostly made for cabinets, and then they're going to spray it with lacquer or do something. They're not going to do much with it. It's I've done a little bit of it, but I don't use much veneer at all because I really am a hardwood guy as opposed to a veneer person. I like the look that you can get with a lot of veneers for accent, like a drawer front or a panel. But again, the sander, though, will go down. 4,000 RPM may sound like a lot, but it's really not. If you take 4,000 divided by 60, it's probably like 30 revolutions per minute or something like that. Or it's not very fast. And so again, the sander only weighs 1.3 pounds. It's very light. You can control it with your hand as to the amount of pressure that you're applying on your material. I've used like 60 grit. Man, you can really get after something with 60 grit, and you can apply a lot of, the motors are powerful enough, you won't stall them out either. They won't stop. But I said I sanded that piece to 3,000 grit. After about 15 seconds, I'd say it's about 10,000 grit. I've worn the grit off running it at 10,000 RPM. You're really burnishing the wood with the backing of the fabric backing of the pad, to be honest with you. So whether you tell somebody 5,000 grit or 4,000 grit, who knows what stage of the game you're at, you know. The one beauty about this Mirka sander, and I'm not being paid by Mirka, is the thread pattern that they use on there is a very standard thread. You can use a Porter cable. You can use these Danny design pads, the one that I mentioned. But the Festool, you have to use their sanding pads, and they only make two. A soft one they call soft, and a hardback. That's it. That's all you get for $650. So there's no versatility.
Yeah, that's why we've switched, or I've switched to the Mirka also. I had a whole set of Festool. Hey, how about Steve? How about you and veneer and sanding veneer?
I don't use commercial veneer. It's something I never bothered to learn. It's not a look that I go for. I do use shop-made veneers. Some people, if you're familiar with a certain quarter sawn woods like California sycamore, the end grain on, or the edge grain, is horrible. It's absolutely horrible. So I just put veneer over that, and it looks just like everything else. So that's the kind of things I use veneer for. And I've cut 64th veneer on my bandsaw. Not huge pieces, but I have. Most of it's around the 16th to 3/32 thing. But to go back to this whole sanding and the micro scratches, had a conversation in the past few weeks about micro scratches. Where do they come from? How do you prevent them, etc. With someone who doesn't want to be part of this. Let's say, but part of this conversation, this group. Anyway, so there are some different things. Number one, cheap sandpaper, because the grits aren't consistent. So it's okay if you have a finer grit in there, it'll just get lost. But if you have 100 grit piece of 100 grit on a 180 piece, you're screwed. Now it's just your swirlies all over the place, or even if you're using regular hand sandpaper. So there's that issue. The other thing, and he said, it's the most important, is clean between grits. Totally wipe it off, vacuum it off, do whatever it is you got to do so there's nothing there, and the surrounding area. So, because you'll kick up stuff, whether you want to or not. Just the sander spinning around is going to make little vortexes all over the place. And if there's any of that grit floating around, it could end up on top. Because I've been wondering, frequently, I go through this 10 times and I'm still trying to get rid of this stupid swirlies or whatever, and they've moved. So, and that's the case. That's what he puts it down. I haven't been able to put that to the test. However, it makes a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Bravo. I totally agree.
Anybody else have the sanding veneer is tough. Any other?
Jay, I know, like doing the river tables, they tell you, you've got to wipe it off, maybe even a light mist on there and wipe it off, let it dry, because they say the same thing, that even any little piece of sawdust will put a mark in that river that you're putting in. So I think that makes a lot of sense to me.
Totally agree. Especially when I'm using epoxy, you'll get this white sort of gummy stuff that'll come off, and I'll use mineral spirits to help clean that off. The other thing that, and I wanted to say this as one of my hacks, you know, the big rod of eraser you can buy to clean off your drum sander abrasive. Turn your Merkur or your whatever sander you're using, your rotary sander, upside down in between, and put that eraser rod on that and just spin that for a few seconds. And
I do that too.
You can extend the life of your abrasives substantially by cleaning out, thank you, Ron, by cleaning off the grits off of the abrasive, and it works great.
Interesting. Somebody mentioned about you know, Steve, you mentioned about the expensive versus the less expensive. Ed uses a brand that you buy that, how much, what do you, about what?
Sandingpro.com. It's an import sander, sandpaper. I've been using it for about 10 years. I haven't experienced any problems with it. It's about 29 cents a sheet. My theory on it is if I'm spinning it at 10,000 RPM, I don't care, sand is sand. I've done experiments with Festool and Klingspor and all these different brands, and I just don't see any significant difference in buying Festool sandpaper at 70 cents a sheet. I just can't justify it.
Yeah. Could I just comment on that?
Sure.
I have profound sawdust allergy, and even with a respirator, I get into trouble. And the thing that sold me on the Festool, because I was a holdout for a long time. You're right, the price is obscene, but the 99.9% capture of the dust, and why it's so good is the proprietary hole pattern. You think you're paying for all that sandpaper and it's mostly holes. Well, that's what allows you to capture all the dust. And by capturing the dust, you're not grinding that dust into your surface as you sand. So it goes back to what we were talking about. So A, it cuts down on the dust for you to breathe, and B, it cuts down on the grit to be ground into your face of your surface.
Okay. Well, I have a question. You talked about dust control, but the Merkur pads are designed to take most of the different hole patterns of the sandpapers. In other words, they have the hole pattern exactly for the Festool sandpaper. And they have some other holes in there for like Porter cable sandpaper or whatever. But the one that I'm using that comes in from our good friends overseas, they've copied the Festool, the 9-hole pattern in the, I'm able to use the less expensive sandpaper with the same hole pattern. It accommodates that the Merkur will accommodate.
Yeah, I went there and got one of my boxes of the Festool. I only use the Festool paper. I don't know when I bought this. It's probably fairly old, but it's $52 for a box of 100. So that's 50 cents a sheet. So I don't use that much. So I just go ahead and continue with the Festool, even though I use the Merkur sander.
Now, the one question that is unanswered, to be honest with you, is I said sand is sand, but that may not be true. Maybe there's certain materials that are better suited for sandpaper than the beach sand that you get at Newport Beach or the one that you get in any place over the world. Who cares? I don't have any knowledge about what sand is being used on people's sandpaper. I just have found that I don't get 5 times the life with a piece of Festool sandpaper than I do with my 29 cents.
Yeah.
When I started buying it, it was 22 cents a sheet. Now it's up to 29, but everything's going up like a rocket anyway. But that would be, I don't know if all that stuff's proprietary for the different manufacturers. They don't want to tell you where they get their sand, where they buy it from, how they sift it with the different screens to get, you know, the particle size between grits. We're talking in the tens of thousands of a difference in particle size. So however they sift the sand into these bins, the screens must be incredibly accurate, okay? So there's a big science to this whole thing. And Maybe even the adhesive that they use on the sandpaper,
Oh, yeah.
one is better than the other guy. You know, if you got cheap adhesive, maybe all the sand's going to come off in about 2 seconds. Who knows? I don't know.
Well, I think
So-
your success with your sandpaper is, you know, that's all you
Yeah.
got to go on. It
So-
works.
One thing with sandpaper I use, if you use the cheap sandpaper, the sort of hook and loop stuff on the back will wear off before the sandpaper does. So it's like,
No, I haven't
Yeah.
found that to be true at all. In fact, all the Mirka sanders that I have, they make what's called a pad saver. It's basically a very thin Velcro hook and loop pad that you put on your pad, because the pads are like $50 a pop now. This pad saver is just a hook and loop thing. And if you wear that off, you tear it off, it's $4, you throw it in the trash, put another one on. But I have a heck of a time. I'll do a demonstration next time trying to peel off the sandpaper that I'm using for 29 cents a sheet. I literally have to grab it with two and yank it off. That's how hard it is to get off. So I'm not disagreeing with you, Kenny. I just don't have that experience. Now, if my sandpaper was flying across the shop every 5 seconds,
we'd-
I'd agree with,
Yeah,
I've never had a piece of sandpaper come off even at 10,000 RPM.
yeah, well,
I'll give you some
I
to
buy the
try.
Diablo stuff, and I'm telling you, stay away from that stuff, because after
Yeah,
20
yeah, Home
minutes, it
Depot.
just the sandpaper will fly off of your sander, and it's just a
Okay.
pain in the ass.
Hey, I'll give you. I don't know if Dennis has any. I'll give you an assortment. You can try it. I'm not a distributor. I'm not trying to make any money. I'm trying to be helpful, guys. You know, and if you buy $200 worth, which is basically about eight
Bucks.
cases of
Yeah.
100, you get free shipping. So you spend a couple $100 and you got yourself 800 sheets. of
Lifetime
sandpaper.
supply.
Yeah, lifetime.
So what's the name of your paper again that you're using?
Sandpaperpro.com. They only make it in 6-inch. I've
Um,
talked to them about offering it 5-inch because everybody I know has a 5-inch sander. They just, for some reason, are brain dead on it. I don't get it.
I want to ask a question about storage of sandpaper. In California, you don't have that problem because you don't have enough water out there. But in, say, Florida, Miami here, where the moisture level is constant, what is the
100%.
what is the best way to store sandpaper, especially if you were to buy in bulk like that, and not end up with what I'll call limp paper over the course of months or years?
Put it in a Ziploc bag and push all the air out of it and zip it tight. Now, if you got a food saver, you can put it in a vacuum thing and suck all the air out of it, and I guarantee you it won't. But basically, you just want to keep the moisture from getting inside. In a Ziploc bag, they're for, you can. I've got some 2-gallon Ziploc. They're pretty big bags. You know, you can. So easy to open, easy to close up. Boom, done.
I've got paper that lasted for maybe 3 to 4 years, and I'm in the Keys with it, in Florida Keys. And as long as it's in an AC place, it's got no problem. No bags,
Right.
no nothing.
Yeah.
But it's got to be kept climate controlled.
Keep it in your house.
I've got a couple questions for you.
Go.
As far as the veneering, how thick is too thick to veneer? I've gone up to not quite 1/8 of an inch thick, and I've had pretty good success, but I was wondering how thick you can actually go.
Well, are you bending it?
No, I was laminating, regular Baltic birch plywood.
Oh,
I was making a veneer for it.
okay.
And the last time it was spalted maple.
Okay. Well, the definition of what is the definition of veneer? In my definition, it would be thin wood. So you have to, veneer can be, in my term, it can be a 1/16 of an inch thick, a 1,000th of an inch thick, or it can be 1/8 of an inch thick. I was wondering if you were going to bend it. Now that's a different story there with the bending, but I don't think there's any limitation on how thick your veneer or thin it can be.
Technically, if the veneer is, the thicker the veneer, the more reactive it is to the moisture content.
Correct.
The only real experience I have with the thin wood is the guitar tops, and which the tops are usually, they're about 3 millimeters. What's that in thousandths?
About 100 thousandths of an inch. It's 0.093.
So we have to worry about the wood movement. That's why most guitar tops have a slight bow to it, and that bow is not for any other reason than to allow it to expand and contract a little bit, because the bracing on the underside basically does the same thing as your substrate for the plywood. So the bending actually allows the wood to expand and contract a little bit. I don't know if how relevant that is to actually gluing it onto a piece of plywood, because the plywood is rigid, and the wood, if it shrinks a lot, it will split, and if it gets wet, it will expand and bubble. So that's an interesting technical question. Yeah. I think the veneers now are like super thin.
Oh, yeah.
And very non-reactive to the moisture content.
All right,
Steve,
I have another one for you. When you're sanding that fine, why not use your oil finish as you're sanding? This way it makes a slurry and it fills all the pores and that, and it comes out polished, just like you were showing with your.
Well, no, that's another whole subject. The problem is the oil finish has wax in it. And I've had bad experience with even a piece of furniture that I've done, and I put the oil finish on it, and I found some micro scratches. And I went back and sanded it down with 400 grit, 800 grit, whatever, tried to polish it. I can't get the same sheen with the oil or the wax mixture. It just won't be as shiny. Yeah. It's got, it's kind of interesting. If you look at it from like looking down on this tabletop, it looks like a little bit of a matte finish. But if I stand back and look at it with the reflection of the light, you can see that it does look polished, but then you look down on it and it doesn't have that shine. Plus, I don't like swirling oil around with my sander at 10,000 RPM. You know, it's not, no. I just haven't had good luck doing that. The only thing I've had reasonable good luck with is a piece of furniture that's about 5 or 6 years old, and maybe there's a little scratch in it or something, and I go back out. Maybe the oils are so dry in it, or the wax is dry enough now that I'm sanding all that out of there, and I've had pretty good luck. But something that is in the neighborhood of a year or two old, I haven't had good luck with it.
What oil finish do you prefer?
My own, actually, it's a Sam Maloof. 1/3 McCluskey's high gloss marine spar varnish, 1/3 tongue oil, pure tongue oil, 1/3 boiled linseed oil. And I used to melt the wax and heat up the oil mixture and to homogenize everything. But now I use this Howard's orange oil, or oil and wax. You buy it at Home Depot. It's got about 60% carnauba wax and beeswax. Heat it up with some hot water, squeeze it in there, boom, done. Same effect, same look, everything, a lot faster. But the problem is you have to mix up, unless you buy little pint cans, you get a quart of this, a quart of that, and a quart of that. By the time you get done, you get about, right now in today's market, about $100 in materials and a gallon almost of this oil mixture. And you go, what the heck am I going to do with this? But here's another secret. There's a product on the market called Bly Oxygen. It's basically a can of argon gas, way overpriced, but you just open your can, or before you seal your can, take and spray about 2 seconds of this argon gas, and it's heavier than oxygen, and it will put a layer between the air in the can and the oil mixture, and it won't skin over. You won't get any. I mean, I've had cans of oil now for a year. I open it up and it's just perfect. No, mostly the varnish in there is what skins over. So,
what was the name of that carnauba wax product?
What's that?
What was the name of that carnauba wax product?
Oh, it's called Howard's Wax and Feed. I believe that's the name of it.
Wax?
And it's really great for like polishing your furniture in your house. Or a few years back, Dennis and I were doing shows over a local city, and we brought our furniture over there, and we would just take a rag with this on it and wipe. Man, everything just popped. It explodes. It just looks beautiful, and it's not oil. It'll dry very reasonably quick, and it's not tacky. It's about $8 for a quart. It's not bad. I mean,
Yeah, we use
$8. Holy smokes! Give me a case of it.
Is that after you use the spar varnish, the tung oil, and the boiled linseed oil, you make that mixture up, and then you put that Howard's on top?
Yeah, you just
mix it all together.
I have to heat it up though, because the viscosity is fairly thick. Now, when I say heat it up, just get hot tap water in a pot, and just, my wife loves me for grabbing a kitchen pot to do this. But all you want to do is just heat it up enough where the viscosity, where you shake it, and now it's like a can of spray paint. You know what I mean? Before it's fairly thick. And when you squeeze it in the cold oil, it'll kind of curdle a little bit, like cottage cheese. But if you heat it up to maybe 140 degrees or whatever tap water is, 160 degrees, it just goes in and blends with the oil. And the beeswax works really well. I had to heat it up, and then I had to heat the oil mixture to about 200 degrees. It's not really good. Okay.
How much of Howard's did you put in? You said 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. That's okay.
Well, I put a quart of one of these quart bottles. It's not quite a third. So it may be a little less than a quart of it, but when I get done, I basically have 4 quart cans that are pretty full. It almost makes a gallon. I don't know if you can buy boiled linseed oil is the cheapest thing in the mixture. Don't worry about buying a quart can. It might be $10 right now. But I just bought a quart can of McCluskey's Marine Spar Varnish, $40 for a quart. Okay. It's getting, you might be able to buy a pint can of the pure tung oil. Don't buy the, like the teak or what is it? These tung oil blends or whatever. They're not, they're just,
They're mixes.
They're mixes.
Diluted.
They're diluted. Right?
Now, just to, Ed and I've been using the McCluskey linseed oil fairly consistently, but I've always, I never like to just depend on what just because I did it last week, I don't really want to do it this week. So I've experimented. I've done 50-50 with mineral spirits, 50-50 linseed oil and spar varnish. And then I've added mineral spirits, depending on the species of the wood. The walnut, the maloof stuff is really good for walnut, but we do teak and we do, or not teak, but koa and lots of other species. And, for me, I try to adjust everything to fit, instead of just doing it because it looks good on walnut, I experiment a little bit with these other mixes. And right now, on a lot of the stuff I'm doing, it's just simply McCluskey's and linseed oil. And then I cut it with the mineral spirits. It's just, it's really pretty. With the eucalyptus that I'm using, it's so dense and hard grain. There is very little penetration. So that's why I cut it with the mineral spirits. And then I put a couple of, 3 or 4 coats on it. How many coats do you normally apply?
1.
Yeah. And that stuff is absolutely beautiful. And I think, if you have our pieces next to one another, the finishes are beautiful. That's the key.
My secret is I polish it to 3,000 or 4,000 grit, whatever you want to call it. Looks like a mirror. I put 2 and 3 coats on just as an experiment. Within a couple of days, I don't see any difference. At $40 a quart, I don't want to waste it. So I just put 1 coat.
And I have to, the kind of the philosophical thing about finishing. I mean, I know, Steve, you apply surface coating, or you put stuff on the wood. But I have, and I think Ed, I want to polish the wood fibers. I don't want to polish the plastic on top of it. I want to touch the wood. I want to feel the wood. If it scratches, I can sand it out and do it. And I know it's just a philosophical thing. I like touching the wood. I do the same on my guitars. I polish them into the 3000 or 4000, if that's what I have. And that really is the key. You polish the wood, and whatever you put on is going to be beautiful. And you're touching the wood. So.
Why would you put wax into your oil finish?
Wax?
Why?
Yeah.
Because Sam Maloof did it.
Yeah. I don't put the wax in the finish.
Okay, because I do the same thing with the linseed oil and that, but I don't put any wax into it, and then I thin it out with the mineral spirits, and I'll heat it up, and it seems to penetrate a heck of a lot quicker.
Yeah,
on the real hardwoods.
Interesting.
I've never tried the Maloof oil wax combination, just the oil, but Irwinson tried that wax. Remember on that walnut, and it just didn't have the same. No, wasn't as good.
Now, was that the commercially the Rockler Maloof oil?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't use that. That is don't use that, because it's not. It's been reformulated. Even Mike Johnson at the Maloof Foundation, or at Sam Maloof Woodworker, I don't know if he uses that. He said it's not the same as it was from 5 years ago.
Mm.
So
welcome to California.
Yeah, it's a blend now, just like all the other finishes. So,
Dennis, does that mean I have to recall my 3 end tables I made for friends because I used that stuff?
No, your table was made with the good formulation. We bought a bunch of the good stuff.
Okay.
And we're talking about the stuff within the last 3 years. Yours was finished before the improvement for California.
How long does linseed oil last? I mean, if you buy a can of it.
I've had a can for 6 years, a gallon can, probably for 6 years. And a good question. I maybe should smell it.
I don't think it ever goes bad.
It seems to be okay.
Forever.
As long
keep closing the top.
Yeah. And squeeze out the air. As long as it doesn't get oxygen, it won't polymerize, and it'll last forever. In fact, most of the ancient or the masters, the painters, they used linseed oil as the oil, and some of the stuff is still unpolymerized, which is kind of cool.
Hey, real quick, sandingpro.com. There's the box it comes in.
At Oregon Gas is available from KBS Coatings. I use it for the Pour 15 and a lot of stuff. And it does work, like you say. It separates the air. It's heavier than the air. And
you can get it at wine shops too.
Who?
Cheaper than getting it at paint supplies.
Yeah.
I'm using it for over 10 years.
Uh-huh.
So the other thing with the polymerization, if you're worried about it particularly, put a few drops on a piece of glass or something like that and let it sit. See what happens. Does it dry or not? Does it just stay gummy? That'll tell you if it's any good or not.
Yeah. It stays gummy. You put too much.
I'm sorry, I'm ignorant. What's the answer? If it becomes dry, it's good on the glass?
Yeah, it'll dry, but not. It's not like rock hard, but if it's never really dries, there's an issue.
Okay.
Well,
it's going to take a while.
Yeah. One thing about the Maloof oil finish with all these oils in it, you do have to wipe. You apply it. I let it set for 10, depending on how hot it is, but you do have to wipe it all off. And after I wipe it off with paper towels, I use a terry cloth and I just keep going over it because it will dry in 3 or 4 days where you go, ooh, what's this sticky spot right here? Yeah. So you have to wipe it off. But
Ed, going back to your statement about grit, I don't know if you've seen this stuff. So this is purple. It's 3M's latest marketing thing. It's called Cubitron 2. You actually can get it at Home Depot and Lowe's and stuff now. Apparently, I think that it's cubic zirconia. I'm not certain. I haven't been able to go that far down the road, but a friend of mine said that's what he's thinking it is, looking at the structure of it, etc. But all you got to find, the stuff doesn't load and it lasts forever. This is just regular sandpaper. But they also make, they make it in discs and things like that I wouldn't use. But as far as hand sanding, sometimes
don't they use garnet?
Yeah,
they use garnet. That's the
orange stuff.
Aluminum oxide,
aluminum
garnet, zirconium oxide.
Aluminum oxide.
Yeah, aluminum oxide.
Does anybody ever recommend either misting with water or maybe some mineral spirits between coats, between sandings to raise the grain?
I don't do that.
No, again, there's so many. What would it be? Theories on that kind of stuff. I've done it, but it's just another step that gets in the way of me finishing a project.
So
Everyone said don't do it.
My understanding, and this could just be a myth, but like if you're using a water-based finish, then you want to raise the grain, like spray it and then sand it again. But if you're using like an oil-based finish, then you don't have to.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't use water-based.
Oil-based.
Yeah, I don't usually use water-based neither, but sometimes like on a guitar top, you have this nice color. And so you use a water-based so it doesn't amberize it. And so that's what I was always told. And so I just listened to them. But I don't use water-based finishes enough to actually like worry about testing it out.
You only need to raise the grain if you use water-based. Like I agree with that. At your last grit, when you're done, you raise the grain, let it dry. It's thoroughly dry. Then you go back in and sand that off. And the sanding off, how you do that is really important. It's like 2-3 swipes. That's it. So there's no more fuzz. It's by hand. It's not with a machine. It happens very, very quickly. Otherwise, what you're doing is now you're exposing new wood. You're just trying to get rid of the little bit of fuzz that's gone. So it's just spray. So once it's gone, you're done.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, thanks.
I think Scott should share some cookies. I see Scott's got cookies.
Cookies.
I'll take a cookie, Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take one.
Oatmeal raisin cookies.
I'm getting hungry. I haven't had
Homemade
yet.
Yeah.
Okay. We're getting close to the wrap up, but Steve, you had a bad experience entering San Diego or trying to enter San Diego?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what time you put your entry in, but I
okay, first explain the design in wood.
Okay, design in wood is technically an international design competition inside of the San Diego County Fair. So it's put on by the San Diego Woodworkers Association. It's a big deal. It's one of the biggest regular, if not the biggest regular design competition in the U.S. It gets its own article in Fine Woodworking and certainly some of the other magazines out there. So that's that. Last Wednesday, they sent out an email saying, sounded like they weren't having a whole lot of submissions. You have almost a month to get done with this. I wasn't done. Send them in and we'll take it from there. So I believe you, Dennis, put yours in, wasn't finished. Mine certainly wasn't. And I started uploading it, the entire process. I want to think 6:30 or 7 o'clock on Friday, and you had till midnight. And I put all my information in there that was ready to upload photos. It crashed. It kept on crashing. It just couldn't do anything. I went back, different to the email. I went to the websites. I went to everything, trying a different way to get into it. Just couldn't get in. So I about 10:30, I said, you know what? If you don't see my entry, I've been working on this thing forever. Like you need to have people on this. I tried to enter other things too. Yeah. So as a not woodworking, I went to the photography exhibit or whatever it was, some of the other ones that were still open, acting like I was going to put an oil painting or a photo or something.
But it didn't work.
So
they didn't acknowledge that it was their system problem, that it crashed and therefore extended the deadline?
Well, I got the email back from them, the automatic responses. Hey, thanks for sending us an email. We'll get back to you on Monday.
Yeah, that's well. I had to continue with the San Diego. I had 2 completed projects. I think you guys have seen you've seen the one I just finished with the eucalyptus, and then I had I call it my 3-drawer console that I also entered, and I did that like last Tuesday. And then I got the email that said, hey, if you're not done, or enter it now and you got a month before you have to deliver it. So I said, okay. Ed, would you go and get the rocking chair there and see if you can just set it. So I've been working on this rocking chair for a while, and just set it right there. Can you see that? Kind of spin it around a little bit. I didn't have the spindles on it. It's not sanded. So I said, oh, okay, well, they must be, So on Friday afternoon, about 3 o'clock, I entered this guy, even though it's not done, which is really weird. They normally don't let you do that. So I entered it, and I had no problem. And then,
I did mine at about 3 o'clock Friday afternoon, and it went through perfectly. I didn't have any problem. Yeah. Were you doing yours on a cell phone by chance?
No, I don't do that.
Okay. No, I did mine on my desktop computer.
So to cut to the chase, we deliver on the May 24th, and then it opens like June 8th or something like that. So when, between Ed and I and Joan tried, I don't know if he succeeded.
I haven't heard back, and I wanted to get the name of it. The guy you said I could try to find.
Right.
Steve, were you able to get in, or you never got a response either?
No, I got a response. I got a receipt. I got everything.
Yeah. No, I mean, Steve said, where's Steve? Steve still on?
Yeah, he's here.
Was he able to get in after he emailed him?
I get locked out after I put all the typing. That's where it locked up. So they don't even have photos. Yeah. I have
we're kind of getting down a rabbit hole. I just wanted to bring it up, and we'll do a video on us going down to the fair, and Ed and I are going to go down there and drop the stuff off, and then I'll probably go there. Well, if we win any ribbons, then we'll go back, and I'll guarantee you, Ed will probably get two ribbons. I just what'd you enter?
I entered a child-sized Maloof style rocking chair and a child-sized dining room chair Maloof style.
It'll win.
Both of them are in the child's division.
Yeah. So anyway, that's why I bring it up. It's a fun thing. It's the first time it's been available since COVID. It is a major deal, and we've had a little tiny bit of success at San Diego, but not a little bit. Hopefully, we're gonna.
That's a separate subject.
Yeah, that's inside baseball. So,
hey, any suggestions for next week's meeting? Any topics? Anybody want? What do you want to hear? What do you want to talk about?
Well, Les said he was going to show us his shop.
If you guys want a quick tour of the rest, I can do that real quick.
Okay.
Anybody wants to check out after?
If anybody needs to leave, we won't think less of you if you leave, but
here you go.
Okay, take care. Thank you, Steve. And Joan's going to do a walk around his new space. There he is.
All right. So my half, as I showed you, is being constructed. It's pretty empty right now, aside from the mess. But we're going to have all the machines. I'll bring the saw stop back over here. planer, joiner, all the essentials, and move some of this stuff around. But this is a 2,000 square foot space, and this is where all the fabrication and the workshops will take place. And then on this side is the storage room, where they've got my partners at Whittier Wood Source have their different pieces cut and tagged. And then there's a metal fabricator on site who helps with these, fabricate these things. So we've got some cool little structures to hold everything, but they're getting selective now about the type of wood they mill because it adds up quick. So just specialty lumber, live edge, some walnut. There's some walnut. That's for you, Dennis.
I know. Good stuff.
Where's the sawmill?
It is outside. This is the showroom.
Oh, wow.
This is the type of stuff they do. A lot of metal legs, but not just the generic kind you order. They like custom weld metal legs, different designs. And they get a ton of requests for river tables. So they learned how to make river tables, but now that things are picking up, we're partnering and doing some more of our style, some high-end woodworking into the mix.
How fun.
Joan, they do all that metal work too?
Yeah. They do the metal.
Yeah, the base of that square table 30 seconds ago was beautiful.
Cool.
There it is.
Sawmill. You must have pretty good internet out there. You're not breaking up at all.
You know, I'm not even on the Wi-Fi. I guess I just have service here.
Cool.
So this is their sawmill, and that back there is the kiln.
Huh? Is it pressure?
I don't know. I don't think so.
It's got to be pressure and heat. How long does it take to dry to get down to 10%, do you think?
I wouldn't know. Don't make me lie to you.
No, okay. Well, it's something we got to learn.
You know, I'm really trying to stay away from being doing a sawmill, so I'm gonna let them worry about that. I think they're trying to get away from it too a bit because they started off selling firewood and then found out that there was a demand for olive and walnut and stuff. So then they started selling all the lumber, but they quickly accumulated way too much. I'll show you this pile outside. Oh.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, the rescue urban wood, there's just so much of it. And, you know, we're trying to, I've been trying to make a market in this for 5 years, and it's just so much of it. It's going to waste. I mean, this is just a tenth or just a fraction of what is cut down and ground up for mulch.
Well, what Ernst and I are talking about is it takes you more than like twice the time to make a piece from this as opposed to just getting dimensional lumber. We spend way more time when we're trying to work with all the rescue wood milling, and we don't love milling. So now we're back to my side.
Yeah.
All of this was milled, and after I cut it, it felt so cold and wet. I checked it again. It was at like 20 something, so it's going to go right back. It's not usable.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Fantastic, Joan. I can't make it next week, but how about the week after?
Anytime. Welcome anytime.
Okay, I think I'm going to call it a day. Hey, it's good to see everybody.
I got to go home and make spaghetti sauce.
Yeah, I got to go.
Dennis, I'm going to give you a call.
Oh, okay. Okay, Bill.
Okay.
Take care. I got some
All right,
news
bye,
also on
everybody.
the Maloof, so give me a call.
Right.
Talk to you tomorrow, Michelle.
Bye. Next week.
Bye.
We'll
Later,
figure
guys.
something out. We'll
Bye,
figure
Joe.
something out. Okay.
Bye.
Email Kevin. Email Kevin for some ideas if you have anything. All right. Take care.
All right, take care.
I got to learn how to end this.
How to hang up.
Yeah.